My wife forged my signature to give my $1 million business to our spoiled daughter. She erased my other two kids from the will. But I found her laptop open and discovered all her signature practice pages. Now she works retail and never saw coming what I did. I'm 58 years old. I run a home renovation company that I built from scratch. And 6 months ago, I discovered that my wife of almost 30 years forged my signature to rewrite my will and leave everything to our youngest daughter while completely cutting out my other two children. And when I say everything, I mean everything. The house, the business, the savings accounts, the investments, absolutely everything I built, working like an animal for decades. I guess I should start from the beginning so this makes sense. Because honestly, I never thought I'd end up here, divorcing the woman I planned to grow old with and basically losing a daughter in the process. I grew up in absolute poverty. I mean the kind where you eat beans every day and your shoes have holes until they literally fall apart. My father was an alcoholic and my mother worked 3 jobs to support me and my 2 brothers. From the time I was 12, I was working, first mowing lawns, then in construction during summer, and I promised myself that my kids would never, ever go through what I went through. I met Diane when I was 28. She was 26, and she seemed like the perfect woman. You know, kind, hardworking, with values similar to mine, or so I thought. We got married a year later and had Matthew when I was 29. I was just starting my renovation business, basically working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. 3 years later, Samantha came along. And honestly, those first years were tough financially, but we were happy. Or at least I thought we were. The business started taking off when Matthew was about 6. We finally had enough money to buy a decent house, for the kids to have new clothes instead of secondhand, to go on vacation once a year. And then, when I was 33 and Diane was 31, we found out she was pregnant again. We hadn't planned it, honestly, but we said, well, we already have 2. What's one more? And that's how Ashley came along. From the beginning, it was different with her. And looking back, I should have seen it coming, but I was so busy working that I didn't pay attention to the signs. Diane became obsessed with Ashley in a way she never had with Matthew or Samantha, like the baby couldn't cry for even 2 seconds without Diane running like the house was on fire. Matthew and Samantha basically grew up learning to be independent because mom was always busy with the baby, and I was at job site after job site building the business. By the time Ashley was 5, we already knew we had a problem. The kid wouldn't take no for an answer, threw monumental tantrums if she didn't get what she wanted, and Diane always gave in. I tried to set boundaries, I really did, but Diane constantly sabotaged me. If I said you can't have that toy, Diane would buy it for her behind my back. If I punished Ashley for misbehaving, Diane would lift the punishment as soon as I left the house. Matthew was like 12 when he told me, Dad, Mom is ruining Ashley, and I told him not to exaggerate, that she was just a little kid. What an idiot I was, seriously. The years passed and the pattern got worse. Much worse. Matthew and Samantha got good grades, worked part-time in summer, saved their money, were responsible. Ashley constantly failed classes, never finished anything, quit any job after 2 days because it was too hard, or her boss was mean, or her coworkers were annoying. And Diane always had an excuse, always. That Ashley was sensitive, that she needed more support, that the world was cruel to her. I was working so much trying to keep the business running and growing that I basically let Diane handle everything with the kids. And that was my big mistake, probably the biggest of my life. Matthew left home at 20, got a job in it, and supported himself from then on. Samantha studied to be a teacher, also became independent as soon as she could. Both came to visit regularly. They were good kids, but I could see the tension between them and their mother over how she treated Ashley. By the time Ashley turned 20, she was still living with us, hadn't finished even 1 semester of college, had no job, slept until noon every day, and expected us to pay for everything. Her phone, her car, her designer clothes, her nights out with friends. Diane constantly gave her money, and when I protested, she said Ashley was still finding herself, that she needed time to mature. What really started to bother me was how Ashley treated Matthew and Samantha. When they came to visit with their partners, Ashley made derogatory comments about their jobs, about their modest homes, about how she would never live like that. and Diane would laugh like it was funny. Matthew pulled me aside at a Christmas dinner like 2 years ago and told me, "Dad, I don't want to come anymore if Ashley is going to be here. She's unbearable, and Mom does nothing to stop her." Samantha said something similar a few months later. I tried to talk to Diane about this. I really did. But she immediately got defensive, said Matthew and Samantha were jealous of Ashley, that they were the ones with the problem. About a year ago, Ashley turned 24 and was still in the same situation. No job, no studies, no plans, living completely off us. I had built a successful business by that point. We had properties, investments, a paid-off house that was worth quite a bit, and honestly, I was starting to think about semi-retiring, about letting my trusted employees handle more things while I enjoyed life a bit. I made a will like 3 years ago where I left everything divided equally between Matthew, Samantha, and Ashley, with Diane managing everything if I died first. It seemed fair to me, each kid got a third regardless of their current situation. But then we get to 6 months ago, and my world literally crumbled. Diane had gone out somewhere. I think she said she was going to the supermarket or something, and left her laptop open on the kitchen table. I needed to print some business documents, and my computer was having issues, so I grabbed hers without thinking much about it. I opened the browser to look something up and saw she had several tabs open, and one of them said something like, "Final will review." I froze. I clicked, thinking maybe she was reviewing her own will or something. But no, it was my will, a completely new version that I had never seen or authorized. I started reading, and I felt the blood draining from my face. The new will left absolutely everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything. To Ashley. The house, the business, the bank accounts, the investments, the rental properties I had bought, everything. Matthew and Samantha got nothing. Literally nothing. Not even something symbolic. And at the end of the document was my signature, or what appeared to be my signature. But I knew with absolute certainty that I had never signed that document, had never seen it before that moment. My hands were shaking as I kept going through files on her laptop. I found emails with a lawyer I didn't know, emails where Diane explained that I was too busy to go in person but that she had power of attorney to sign on my behalf, which was an absolute lie. I had never given her that power. There were emails where they discussed exactly how to word the will to ensure Ashley got everything, and the other kids were completely excluded. I found a document where Diane had practiced my signature. There was literally a page with my signature written like 20 times, clearly practicing to forge it. I sat there in complete shock for I don't know how long, maybe 10 minutes, maybe half an hour, just staring at the screen, unable to process what I was seeing. This was the woman I'd been married to for almost 30 years, the mother of my children, the person I trusted most in the world. And she had committed fraud, had forged my signature, had planned to steal my other 2 children's inheritance. You know that feeling when you feel like the floor disappears beneath you? It was exactly that. I took photos of everything with my phone, every email, every document, every version of my practiced signature. I copied the files to a USB drive I found in my desk. And then I heard Diane's car in the driveway and quickly closed everything, left her laptop exactly as I'd found it, and went to my home office trying to act normal when she came in. But I couldn't act normal. Honestly, I was shaking with rage and betrayal, and I don't know how many other emotions. That night, I waited for Ashley to go out, which she did almost every night to go out with her friends with the money Diane gave her, and I confronted Diane. I told her I knew about the will, that I had seen everything on her computer. She first turned pale, then red, and then tried to deny it. Said I had misinterpreted what I'd seen. But I had the photos, I had the copies, and I showed her everything. Then she changed tactics and started crying, said she had done it because Matthew and Samantha were already well established, had jobs and houses and didn't need the money like Ashley did. I yelled at her. And when I say yelled, I mean the neighbors probably heard me. I told her she had committed a crime, that forging a signature is fraud, that she could go to jail for that. She kept justifying herself, said Ashley needed more help, that as a mother she couldn't leave her youngest daughter unprotected, that Matthew and Samantha would understand eventually. I asked her if she realized that what she had done was basically stealing my other 2 children's inheritance, that it was illegal and immoral and a betrayal of the whole family. She said, I didn't understand, that I had always been too hard on Ashley, that she was just protecting her baby. I slept in the guest room that night. I couldn't even look at her. The next day, I called a lawyer who specialized in family law and also fraud. I showed him all the evidence I had collected. He told me we had a very clear case of document forgery, that Diane could face criminal charges, but he advised me to first secure all my assets before she knew I had consulted a lawyer. I followed his advice, changed all my passwords, locked the joint bank accounts so we would need both signatures for any transaction, moved important documents to a safe deposit box at the bank. I also hired a forensic document expert who analyzed the signature on the fake will versus my real signatures on other legal documents. His report was conclusive. The signature was clearly forged. The angles of the letters were wrong. The pen pressure was inconsistent. There were obvious signs that someone had traced my signature slowly, instead of signing with the natural movement I use. This report was going to be crucial later. But at that moment, I was just trying to process that my marriage was basically over. A week after discovering everything, I followed Diane. I know it sounds kind of sick, but I needed to know if there were more things I didn't know about. She said she was going to lunch with a friend, but I saw her head to Ashley's apartment. Diane and I had been paying for that apartment for Ashley for like 2 years. Rent, utilities, everything. Because according to Diane, she needed her independence, even though clearly she wasn't independent if we were paying for everything. I parked half a block away and saw Diane go in carrying a large folder. I waited for like an hour, and when she came out, she wasn't carrying the folder anymore. That night, I checked the home security cameras. Because yes, I have cameras in the common areas. And I saw something that chilled my blood. Diane was talking on the phone in the kitchen, thinking she was alone because I was supposedly at a job site supervising something. She said, verbatim, "Don't worry, my love. When your father is gone, Matthew and Samantha aren't going to see a single cent. Everything is going to be yours. It's already arranged." She was talking to Ashley, obviously. He kept saying they had to be careful, that I was suspecting something, but she had everything under control, that the new will was already stored in a safe place where I would never find it. That's when I realized this wasn't just Diane acting alone. Ashley was completely involved. Both had planned this together. My 5-year-old daughter, my baby, was conspiring with her mother to steal her siblings' inheritance. The level of entitlement and selfishness was simply incomprehensible to me. I saved that recording too, added it to my growing collection of evidence. I installed more cameras, including one in my home office where I kept some important documents. I moved absolutely everything that mattered to a safe deposit box at the bank. Original will, deeds, business documents, everything. I changed the locks on my office. Diane asked why I was doing that, and I told her I'd had some problems with employees accessing confidential business information, and I was being more careful in general. She accepted the explanation, but I could see she was nervous. 2 weeks after all this, I decided it was time to talk to Matthew and Samantha. I invited them both to dinner at Matthew's house without telling them specifically why, just that I needed to talk to them about something important. Diane asked me where I was going, and I told her I had a business meeting. When I got to Matthew's house, Samantha was already there, and both looked worried because I never did these things, never called them together like this without prior explanation. I sat down with them and told them everything, from beginning to end. I showed them photos of the documents, the emails, the forged signature, the forensic expert's report, the recording of Diane talking to Ashley. Matthew turned white as a sheet. Samantha started crying. Neither of them could believe their mother had done something like this. And honestly, they couldn't believe Ashley was involved either, although I think deep down, neither was. Really surprised about Ashley, she had always shown who she was. Matthew asked me what I was going to do, and I told him the truth, that I was going to divorce their mother, that there was no going back after this. Samantha asked if I was going to press criminal charges against Diane, and I told her my lawyer had advised me to wait, that we should first secure everything legally through the divorce, and then decide about criminal charges depending on whether she cooperated or kept trying to fight. Both said they supported me, that they completely understood my decision, but I could see the pain in their faces because at the end of the day, we were talking about their mother. I filed for legal separation a week later. Diane was served at the house by a court officer on a Friday afternoon. I wasn't there. My lawyer had advised me not to be present. According to the officer, Deanne became hysterical, started screaming that this was a mistake, that I was overreacting, that she had only tried to protect Ashley. The officer told her she had to accept the documents anyway. Diane called me like 50 times that night. I didn't answer any calls. She sent me texts saying we needed to talk, that we could work this out, that there was no need to go to divorce. I responded with one message telling her that anything she had to say should be said through her lawyer, that I had nothing more to discuss with her directly. She kept sending messages for days, alternating between pleading and threats, but I stayed firm in not responding. Ashley also started sending me messages, saying I was being cruel to Mom, that I was destroying the family over a misunderstanding. I responded to one, told her that forging my signature and conspiring to steal her siblings' inheritance wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a crime, and that she was as guilty as her mother. She blocked me after that, which, honestly, was a relief. Diane moved to Ashley's apartment 2 weeks later, taking only her clothes and some personal items. I had my lawyer present during the entire move to ensure she didn't take anything that didn't belong to her. She tried to take some paintings we had bought together, but that I had paid for, and my lawyer told her no, that those things would be divided as part of the divorce settlement. She left crying, and part of me, a very small and stupid part, felt sorry for her. But then I remembered the recordings, the emails, the betrayal, and that pity disappeared. What happened next was basically war. Diane and Ashley started a smear campaign against me, calling relatives and friends, saying I had abandoned them, that I was a terrible father who favored Matthew and Samantha, that I was emotionally abusive. Some relatives believed them at first, especially those on Diane's side of the family. But then I started sharing the evidence. Not all of it, because my lawyer told me to save some things for court, but enough to show that Diane had forged my signature and had conspired to disinherit my other children. The family's opinion changed quickly after that. Diane's parents called me, devastated, saying they couldn't believe their daughter had done something like this. Diane's siblings stopped talking to her and started calling me to apologize for doubting me. Even some of Ashley's friends who had been on her side initially started distancing themselves when word got around about what had happened. Matthew and Samantha were incredible during this whole process. They came to visit me regularly, made sure I was eating well and taking care of myself, helped me pack up Diane's things that she had left behind. Samantha, in particular, was very affected. I think because she had always had hope that her mother would eventually see what she was doing with Ashley and change. Matthew was more angry than sad, said he had seen this coming for years, and only regretted that I hadn't done something sooner. 4 months after filing the papers, Diane and Ashley did something that even my lawyer didn't expect. They filed a petition in court, challenging the validity of my original will, the real one I had made 3 years ago. They argued that I had been under undue influence from Matthew and Samantha when I made it, that I wasn't in my right mind, and that the new will Diane had made was the one that really reflected my wishes. It was absolutely absurd. But my lawyer said we had to take it seriously because courts sometimes hear these things. We went to court 3 weeks later. I had all my evidence organized, the forensic report on the forged signature, the emails between Diane and the corrupt lawyer who had helped with the fraud, the recordings of Diane talking to Ashley about their plans. Diane's lawyer tried to argue that she had acted in my best interest, that I was too busy to deal with these things, and she was just trying to help. It was pathetic, honestly. The judge reviewed all the evidence for like 2 hours. He read the forensic report, listened to the recordings, reviewed the emails. Then he looked at Diane and asked her directly if she had forged my signature, and she, incredibly, tried to say no, that I had given her verbal permission. The judge showed her the emails where she herself said she was practicing my signature, and Diane finally went quiet. The judge dismissed her petition completely, called it frivolous and a waste of the court's time, and even suggested that Diane's lawyer should consider the ethical implications of having filed such a case. The divorce was finalized 2 months later. Diane received a settlement that was fair, considering the years of marriage, but significantly less than what she would have received if she hadn't committed fraud. I didn't ultimately press criminal charges because my lawyer said the process would be long and expensive and would probably only result in probation anyway, given it was her first offense. Part of me wanted to do it anyway on principle, but in the end, I decided I just wanted everything to be over. Now, 6 months after everything exploded, I'm rebuilding my life. Matthew comes to dinner almost every week. Samantha, too. We've formed a closer relationship than we had before, which I guess is something positive that came out of this whole mess. I've started going out socially again. Nothing serious with women yet because, honestly, I'm not ready to trust someone like that again, but at least I'm not sitting home alone every night. The business is better than ever, ironically. I think I channeled all my rage and pain into work, and we ended up having our best year yet. I hired 2 new project managers who are excellent and are allowing me to start thinking about that semi-retirement I wanted before everything went to hell. Ashley is still living in that apartment, and as far as I know, Diane is still paying for everything. I've heard through Matthew that Ashley had another job that lasted like 3 weeks before she quit, something about her boss being impossible. Diane now works part-time at a department store to supplement her divorce settlement because it turns out maintaining Ashley and her lifestyle is expensive. Who would have thought? Apparently, the relationship between them has also gotten strained because Ashley expected all the divorce money to be for her, but Deanne needs that money to live too. I haven't spoken to Ashley since that text months ago. Sometimes I think about her, about the kid she was before Diane completely ruined her with so much enabling, and it makes me sad. But then, I remember that Ashley is a 5-year-old adult who consciously participated in a plan to steal her siblings' inheritance, and that sadness turns into something more like resignation. I did what I could as a father. It wasn't perfect because I worked too much. But Matthew and Samantha turned out fine with the same upbringing. So clearly the problem wasn't just me. Diane sent me an email a few weeks ago asking if we could talk, saying she had been in therapy and now understood that what she did was wrong. I didn't respond. My lawyer advised me not to have any contact with her outside of what's absolutely legally necessary, and honestly, I have nothing to say to her. What she did wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. It was a planned and calculated betrayal that lasted months, and there's not enough therapy in the world that can fix that. Last week, Matthew asked me if I would ever forgive Diane or Ashley. I told him the truth, that I didn't know. Part of me thinks maybe in 10 or 20 years, when I'm old and close to death, I might feel something different. But right now, the pain and betrayal are too fresh. They stole not just my trust and my marriage, but also the illusion that I had a complete and united family. That's something you don't recover from easily. What I do know is that my current will, the real one that's properly signed and notarized and kept with my lawyer, divides everything between Matthew and Samantha, equally. Ashley is not included, and that decision feels right. If someday she grows up and realizes the damage she caused, if someday she comes to me with a real apology and shows she's genuinely changed, then maybe I'll reconsider. But I'm not holding my breath waiting for that to happen. For now, I'm focusing on what I have, which is 2 wonderful children who support me, a successful business that gives me purpose, and the peace of knowing I did the right thing even though it was painful. It's not the life I planned when I married Deanne almost 30 years ago, but it's the life I have now, and I'm learning to be okay with that. I guess that's enough.